So we are starting this session. The session has three main topics, but as expected, we are going to drift away from the topics also. We are not going to remain restricted to the topics. I'll first ask the three speakers to speak a bit about the topics, and then we'll take it to the question-answer session. As of now, we are not taking the audience question because the time is very restricted. So we have the questions prepared, we have done our research and come up with questions, and I hope it's going to be good for everybody. So the topics are Ambassador Anil Trigunayat is speaking on present and emerging threats from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran and West Asia. Professor Srikkanth Kondapalli is speaking on China, and they have a saying called two tigers cannot exist in a mountain. So the tigers in this case are India and China. So two tigers in a mountain. And Lieutenant General Gen Ata Hasnain is speaking on Indo-US strategic partnership, opportunities and threats from the emerging trends. Russia-Ukraine war and the developments in the Indo-Pacific. So these are the three speakers, and then we'll start the question and answer sessions. So we'll start with Ambassador Anil Trigunayat.
Namaskar. Dr Mayank Singh. Congratulations, I must thank you, Ashimanta. Amazing initiative being mentioned by Gen Raj Shukla. Can you hear me now? So it is an honor for me to be part of this illustrious panel and other speakers. You could not have asked for better and more distinguished speakers to share their thoughts. And more importantly, talking to our young friends who are going to be the future of our country is extremely important. These words that a lot of us are going to speak might sound a bit strange, alien to you sometimes, but they are going to be part of your life growing up as we complete Amrit Kal in the next 25 years. Today, as we see, in about 7-8 minutes that I've been given, it will be very difficult to speak about three major challenges that exist, which are also great opportunities for us. Afghanistan, Iran, and West Asia. If I say that all three are extremely important for us, तो ये कहने वाली बात है जो सबको पता है. कारण ये है कि अफगानिस्तान 1947 से पहले हमारा कॉन्टिग्यूअस स्टेट, अफगान हमारे साथ कलेक्टेड है, पीपल टू पीपल लेवल. अब आज चाहे तालिबान आ जाए या उससे पहले कोई और, भारत के लिए एक अलग तरह की उनकी एक पहचान है, एक उनकी मित्रता है, और वो ग्रास रूट पे आज भी कायम है. तो आपने देखा होगा या सुना होगा कि 20 साल लगभग पहले भारत ने उनके नेशन बिल्डिंग में काम किया. When the Americans said their president that we are not there for nation building, we are there to fight terror. In the end, what have they done? They came to eliminate Taliban and they handed over power. So it's a full circle that they have done. Then they say that they are not recognizing, the world is not giving due recognition, which is called diplomatic recognition, de jure as it is called. But de facto, जब आप किसी मुल्क के साथ एक एग्रीमेंट साइन करते हैं, उनके साथ बात करते हैं, तो आप उनको रिकग्नाइज करते हैं कि वो एक लेजिटिमेट अथॉरिटी है, और वही उन्होंने किया है. तो एक चीज़ आप ये देखिएगा कि जहाँ तक साम दाम दंड भेद सत्य की बात है, तो hypocrisy is also a buzzword and an underlying factor in the discourse that the West churns out to maintain their supremacy. और भारत को भी इसके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा सजग रहने की ज़रूरत है. It's extremely important. So अब पीछे हम लोग जब वहाँ से अमेरिकन निकल गए, किसी को पता भी नहीं था कि इतनी जल्दी निकल जाएंगे, ऐसा आप जानते हैं. और मैं कल अपने डिस्कशन में ये कह रहा था, और ये बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग सी बात है, आप भी देखें कि 19-20-21वीं सदी में कोई सुपर पावर ओपनली किसी भी वॉर को जीत नहीं पाई. Afghanistan has been a graveyard of empires. You don't learn from history and you become victim of it. That's what the problem. But for India, it is extremely important from another point of view. Afghanistan, and that is its terror outfits which are there, the role of Pakistan, which is the driver of many of those terror outfits in one way or the other, from Rawalpindi especially. Haqqani network, you must have heard about it, कि Al-Qaeda के जो सबसे बड़े चीफ थे जवाहिरी, उनको अमेरिकन ने मार दिया. हर चीज़ की टाइमिंग होती है उनकी. पहले उसामा बिन लादेन जो थे वो अबोटाबाद में मारे गए, 10 साल के बाद में उन्होंने जवाहिरी को मारा. और कौन कंट्रोल करता है काबुल को? जो वहाँ पर बड़े शीरपुर में एक बड़े बढ़िया घर में रह रहे थे, उसको कंट्रोल करता है हक्कानी ग्रुप. हक्कानी ग्रुप को कौन कंट्रोल करता है? रावलपिंडी के. तो आप ये देख लीजिए कि और अमेरिका किसके साथ बात कर रहा है? वो भी पाकिस्तान के साथ बात कर रहा है, वो भी उनकी मदद चाह रहा है. चीन किसके साथ बात कर रहा है? पाकिस्तान के साथ बात कर रहा है. तो अफगानिस्तान की जो समस्या इस वक्त है वो बड़ी जटिल समस्या है. लेकिन एक बात जो मैंने सबसे पहले कही कि भारत की जो वहाँ असिस्टेंस है, जो उनकी कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग में कहिए या एक हिस्टोरिकल कनेक्ट है हमारा, वो हमारी वहाँ पर एक बड़ी बात है. और इसीलिए मुझे बड़ी खुशी है कि भारत सरकार ने दोबारा से डिप्लोमेटिक मिशन वहाँ खोला है. टेक्निकल मिशन कहते हैं हम इसको, आजकल असिस्टेंस प्रोवाइड किया है. तो जो एक भारत की छवि पिछले कुछ सालों में उभरी है वो एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. वो क्या है कि फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्डर इन एनी क्राइसिस, स्पेशली फॉर आवर नेबर्स एंड एल्सवेयर. बात सुनिए आपने वैक्सीन डिप्लोमेसी की. हमारा देश इतना बड़ा है, 1/6 ऑफ वर्ल्ड पॉपुलेशन. हम हर साल एक ऑस्ट्रेलिया प्रोड्यूस करते हैं. तो हमें अपने को देखना चाहिए जैसे अमेरिका दूसरे कंट्रीज देख रहे थे. उन्होंने नहीं आपसे शेयर करी अपनी वैक्सीन, बल्कि आपको रोकने की कोशिश करी. क्योंकि एक वैक्सीन के लिए 16-17 कंट्रीज से आपको मिलता है. लेकिन भारत ने क्या किया? जैसे ही उसके पास वैक्सीन आई, चाहे वो दूसरी हो कोई भी, उसने उससे पहले लोगों को, सबसे 150 कंट्रीज को दवाइयाँ मुहैया की जो ज़रूरत थी लोगों को. ये वैक्सीन डिप्लोमेसी है. और ये भारत जब भी कभी विश्व गुरु बनेगा तो हमारी मिलिट्री इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रेंथ तो बहुत ज़रूरी है ही. कि पावर ऑफ द थॉट एंड बिहेवियर इज व्हाट विल डिक्टेट वेदर यू आर ए विश्व गुरु. तो ये चीज़ जो है हमारी हमेशा से है. तो अफगानिस्तान अनस्टेबल है इस वक्त, लेकिन लोगों का ये एक्सपेक्टेशंस कि तालिबान की सरकार वो चीज़ें इम्प्लीमेंट करेगी जो एक वेस्टर्न डायनामिक सिस्टम चाहता है, या वो सोचते हैं कि इस तरह की वॉज ए शिमेरा ऑफ सॉर्ट्स. दूसरा मैं कहूँगा ईरान के बारे में. देखिए सिविलाइजेशन कंट्रीज हैं, हमारे ईरान के साथ बड़े पुराने ताल्लुकात हैं. लेकिन अगेन मैं जैसे कहा कि हर एक समस्याओं के पीछे 3 आप कारण ढूंढ लेंगे, और हर जगह एक कारण में अमेरिका छुपा होगा, चीन छुपा होगा या रूस. वो आपके लिए समस्याएं हैं, ये पहले कहा गया है. तो अब वहाँ पर भी वो अमेरिका ने क्या किया? अपनी फॉरेन पॉलिसी को चलाने के लिए उन्होंने दुनिया को बोल दिया कि आप इनके साथ ट्रेड नहीं करेंगे, आप इनसे ऑयल इम्पोर्ट नहीं करेंगे, हम सेकेंडरी और टर्शरी सैंक्शंस आपको डालेंगे. और आखिरकार क्योंकि आपकी सारी कंपनीज वेस्टर्न सिस्टम में इन्वॉल्व है, आपको उसको रोकना पड़ा. तो आपका नेशनल इंटरेस्ट उसमें सर्व नहीं होता है. जबकि हमारे लीडर्स हमेशा ये कहते रहे हैं कि हम यूनिलेटरल सैंक्शंस में विश्वास नहीं रखते. बट रियल पॉलिटिक्स इज वेरी डिफरेंट. तो इवन दो हम लोगों ने वहाँ से वर्चुअली ज़ीरो किया, उस चीज़ में आप देखिए चीन ने अपना एक पॉलिसी जो बात की जनरल साहब ने उसके बारे में कि चीन किस तरह से अपनी पॉलिसी क्राफ्ट करता है, लॉन्ग टर्म पॉलिसीज, एंड इट स्टैंड्स बाय इट एंड इट डिड. अब हमने जब रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर हुआ है, तब आप देखिए भारत ने कहा कि हम तो रशिया से ऑयल इंपोर्ट करना बंद नहीं करेंगे. आप सबने पढ़ा होगा हमारे विदेश मंत्री के बयान, प्रधानमंत्री के बयान. भारत की अपनी एक पॉलिसी रही, और वो पॉलिसी क्या है? वो पॉलिसी है कि हम अपने नेशनल इंटरेस्ट में जो भी डिसीजन लेना होगा वो लेंगे, एंड विल नॉट गेट कैरिड अवे. और भी प्रेशर बहुत है, आज भी बहुत ज़्यादा प्रेशर है, हर तरह का प्रेशर है भारत के ऊपर में. लेकिन उसके बावजूद आज एक सरकार खड़ी हुई है उस बात में कि हमें पहले अपना. तो हमारा रिलेशंस रूस के साथ क्यों बढ़िया है? क्योंकि रूस आपके साथ, चाहे वो सोवियत यूनियन रहा हो या आज का रशिया है, वो जब आपको ज़रूरत हुई है वो आपके साथ खड़ा हुआ है. चाहे वो रशिया चीन के रिलेशंस हों, उसके बावजूद इंडिया उसके लिए बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट फ्रेंड है. और ये एक तरह के दिलों का रिश्ता जिसको कहते हैं। आज तक भले ही इसकी वीकनेस हो रही है क्योंकि पावर्स गो अप एंड डाउन इन द सिस्टम, दैट इज साइक्लिकल game of powers that continues. India was 27% GDP in the world at that time, and today we are less than 2%. So जो चीज़ें हमें उस चीज़ देखना है, ईरान जो है बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट है। आज की डेट में आप लोग सुन रहे होंगे नॉर्थ साउथ ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉरिडोर, चबहार पोर्ट, इस तरह के शब्द अक्सर सुनने में आते हैं। तो चीन ने जब देखा कि हम उस रास्ते जो कि अमेरिकन सैंक्शंस के बाहर हो सकता है, अगर हम वहाँ से ऑयल मंगा सकते हैं, अपना ट्रेड बढ़ा सकते हैं। और मैं 2000 में मॉस्को में पोस्टेड था जब हमने ये एग्रीमेंट साइन किया था। आज 20 साल के बाद उसके ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा तेज़ी से काम हो रहा है। तो वो सबको दिखा, उसमें कौन कौन शामिल हुआ? उसमें रशिया से आ रहा है वाया ईरान प्रेसिडेंसी के द्वारा, या नॉर्थ साउथ ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉरिडोर के द्वारा भारत के पास ऑयल भी आ रहा है और बाकी ट्रेड भी फर्स्ट शुरू हो गई। ये एक बड़ी बात है। ऑल्टरनेटिव्स क्रिएट करना एक सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज़ है हमारे इसमें। तो ये ईरान, अब ईरान क्या सोच रहा है? उनके फॉरेन मिनिस्टर नहीं आए थे, वो कहने लगे हम आपकी पूरी मदद करेंगे, आपको जो भी मुझसे चाहिए। लेकिन साथ साथ वो ये कहते हैं कि आप जरा अब हमारी तरफ भी देखिए, भाई हम भी आपको 11-12% ऑयल सप्लाई करते थे, तो क्यों नहीं आप हमारी तरफ बताते हैं? बाय फ्रॉम अस, अलाउ अस टू बी पार्ट इन योर प्रोग्रेस। एंड दैट इज द डिफाइंस ऑफ द इरानियंस, दैट डिस्पाइट द सैंक्शंस फॉर डेकेड्स दे हैव सस्टेन्ड एंड स्टूड बाय। They have created their own friendships. अब दूसरा आप देखें, दो तीन मैं वेस्ट एशिया के बारे में कहना चाहता हूँ। देखिए वेस्ट एशिया मैं हमेशा से मेंटेन करता रहा हूँ कि वो हमारे लिए, हमारे नेबर, इमीडिएट नेबरहुड से भी बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है। इम्पोर्टेंट इसलिए है, ना कि आप सोच अगर हिस्टोरिकल और ये सारे कनेक्ट छोड़ दें, तो इम्पोर्टेंट इसलिए है कि आपकी 70% ऑयल एंड गैस और 90% गैस, 70% ऑयल मिडल ईस्ट से आता है। ट्रेड की ट्रेडिंग लेस, जितने भी पोर्ट्स हैं, चोक पॉइंट्स हैं, वो सारे मिडल ईस्ट में हैं। आपसे 2 घंटे की दूरी पर वो लोग हैं। आपका 8 से 9 मिलियन जो वो इंडियन डायस्पोरा है वहाँ पर, जिसको सब चाहते भी हैं, वो वहाँ रहते हैं। वो वहाँ से $60-70 बिलियन आपकी फॉरेन एक्सचेंज किटी में जमा करता है, which is about 1/10 of your foreign exchange reserve. And that's the most reliable foreign exchange. They are not unreliable Indians because they invest in India. And all that money comes to India, which is very much needed for meeting our needs. Thirdly, they are equally important for our food security. Large number of, most of the fertilizers come from there, from these countries. So they are equally important for us. It is until few years ago, हमारी उनके साथ रिलेशनशिप थी ट्रांजैक्शनल। वही ऑयल बेच रहे हैं, हमारे लोग वहाँ से रेमिटेंस कर रहे हैं, नौकरी कर रहे हैं, चले आए। बट टुडे ओवर टाइम वी हैव रियलाइज्ड दैट दिस विल नॉट कंटिन्यू, दिस विल नॉट डू। So today the relationship has moved into many areas and has become truly strategic. And I say with authority that in my view, this government's, Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy, if there is a crown in his foreign policy, this is the West Asia policy. From Israel to Iran, he has been able to engage with everyone. And the hyphenation of the policy, the Israel-Palestine issue अलग-अलग तरह से डिस्कस किए जाएंगे, प्रिंसिपल्स को सेक्रीफाइस नहीं करेंगे। तो ये एक चीज़ है जिसने आज उनको भारत के साथ खड़ा कर दिया है। देखिए थोड़ी बहुत प्रॉब्लम्स तो हमेशा रहती है जब भी दो देशों के बीच में बातें होती हैं, लेकिन अब हमें एक तरह से 2-3 सोल्यूशन मैं बताना चाहता हूँ कि जो लोग रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर को फॉलो कर रहे हैं, उसके बाद में यूनाइटेड नेशंस में जो डिस्कशन हुआ है, भारत की एक पॉलिसी है, आप सबको पता है, बड़ी प्रिंसिपल पॉलिसी है, पीस के लिए है, डायलॉग के लिए है, डिप्लोमेसी के लिए है। लेकिन उसमें और कंट्रीज ने क्या, हमारे नेबर्स ने, साउथ एशिया डिवाइडेड, 4 कंट्री ने अमेरिका का सपोर्ट किया, 4 कंट्री अपोज किया या वो वोट दे दिया, साथ में एब्सटेन किया। बट वेस्ट एशियन कंट्रीज हैव रियलाइज्ड that America is no longer interested in that, cannot remain invested the way it was, because it is moving on to its newer challenge, and that challenge is Indo-Pacific, which everybody knows and will talk about. So they are looking for new partners. whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's India. Choices are very limited for them. But we have to rise to the occasion. We have to provide that comfort level. Today, I feel personally that दो चीजें हमें जरूर करनी चाहिए. एक, since the independence, for some reason or the other, we have not played our Islamic card. India is the second or third largest Muslim nation in the world. Enlightened. We must learn to convey that to this Islamic world. That is one. Second is, the way the global changes are taking place, world is likely to turn into Cold War 2.0, which will be far, far more insidious. Therefore, the only country that today has the possibility, a large number of countries are looking for that kind of a leadership. Not non-alignment in that sense, but I call it as nations for strategic autonomy. And I think India should and will lead in that regard, because that's the only way left for us in this kind of a Cold War situation. I will leave it here and I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
We'll move on to Professor Srikkanth Kondapalli's observations.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the organizers for the invite. This has been specifically one of the gratifying moments for me. Personally, as I studied here in 1981, and so it's a homecoming for me and an honor and a privilege to share my ideas with you. Now, the organizers have been arranging these discussions in the last few years, and we see that Kashimantan to become the mainstream idea. We have many dialogues in Delhi, in Mumbai, Chennai, in Kolkata, and other places. For Kashimantan to become the mainstream idea, we also need to look at our history on why Buddha chose for his first sermon sadhana, which is not far away from here. Why that has become a mainstream idea, influencing today at least 1 billion people in Tibet, in of course Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan. It's been almost wiped out. But Buddhism spread to China, to Japan, to Korean Peninsula, to Southeast Asia, to Sri Lanka, many other countries. So, how Buddhism became a mainstream idea, breaking through first Varanasi, which is the center for Vedic studies. Why the consensus here has been broken with Buddhist ideas, which have questioned several of the existing 6th century religious themes, and how it has spread to the rest of the world, how it had taken roots in distant lands, and how it has become the mainstream idea. First of that is, of course, he had chosen Banaras, Varanasi, sadhana, at the confluence of two rivers, and most important, he needed to contest with his mainstream ideas. And so Yasa was converted into Buddhism. And then you have these 60 monks who spread across. And where do they go? They go to distant lands, spreading his image, spreading his ideas, spreading the middle path approach that Buddha had propagated. And of course, the main ideas of Buddhism. When the Hunas came, ruled over sadhana, ruled over this part of the world, they are also not just ruling over, but taking these ideas back into cultivation and then spreading it across. So these ideas spread because Benares, Varanasi, Kashi was the center of global trade at that point of time. And we have this old Silk Road, which carried on all these goods, ideas, and a host of other things, customs, traditions, and so on. Fahi and Xuanzang, they confirmed about the presence of these stupas, monasteries, and others. And then the spread of these ideas became the mainstream during that part of the time period in history. So today we need to look at what the some international relations theorists suggest to economic interdependence. That is, when two countries trade, when two countries exchange investments, when two countries have people-to-people contact, tourism, and unrestricted, communication between them, there is very less scope for the conflict between A and B. This is what we call economic interdependence theory. Robert Keohane, Joseph Nye, and a host of others have developed this theory of economic interdependence. Now, Benares is today a bubbling city. We have seen many developments. Most important also, this is the Prime Minister's constituency. And there is also the need for the Kashi Manthan to become the mainstream idea. So let me congratulate the organizers for this. And between economic interdependence and the theme of today, securing India at 75, how does these two gel with each other? Economic interdependence theory and securitizing India, or providing security for India. These need not necessarily be contradictory in nature. These have a give and take that I would like to discuss today with you. So, becoming a mainstream idea, of course it took several centuries for Buddhism to become that kind of a mainstream idea, and to the influencing the rest of the world. So one of the things, as the organizers asked me to speak on, this ancient Chinese proverb, a mountain cannot accommodate more than 2 tigers. So this has also been one of the ideas which has a security element here, in the sense that a mountain has to be dominated only by 1 tiger. It cannot be by 2 tigers. So when we look at it historically, we see that China had restricted the Japanese. They did not allow the Japanese to become the second tiger in that part of the world. They also tried to restrict the Koreans, whom they made it into a vassal state in a way for the Middle Kingdom till about 1911. So for centuries, Korean Peninsula, although they had a conflict on the Goguryeo Kingdom, nevertheless they became a vassal state. Some within East Asia, like Ryukyu Islands, also became a vassal for the Middle Kingdom in China. Then Vietnam, while it became a vassal, it also had a conflictual relationship with China for over 1,000 years. So it also has an element of both conflict and interdependence, between economic interdependence and people-to-people exchanges and so on and so forth. So one outcome here we saw in the East Asian history is China tried to eliminate, marginalize the second tiger that is emerging over a period of time. So we saw that happening. So when we look at the 5 regions of Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, West Asia, Ambassador Trigunayat was mentioning Middle East, but I think Indians call this region as West Asia and Central Asia, that is. In these 5 regions, we see currently China trying to marginalize one of the major powers in all these regions. We have seen, for example, Japan has been marginalized. By 2010, Japan was marginalized as the 2nd largest economy in the world. Likewise, the Korean Peninsula has been marginalized in many ways. Till the current president, who is now trying to join the Indo-Pacific, the Quad, the South China Sea related disputes, and others. We have also seen China marginalizing Vietnam through the ASEAN processes, Southeast Asian countries processes. A dominant country, Vietnam is one of the most dominant countries in Southeast Asia. That is getting marginalized through various means. And when we look at West Asia, you have Turkey was marginalized on the person of the Uyghurs, who trace their origins to Turkey since 16th century onwards. Or we have seen China marginalizing both Iran and Iraq during the 70s by supplying arms to each other. And more importantly, coming back to our own region, we see China marginalizing India through Pakistan. There is another Chinese proverb which says that Hashiao Punta, basically which means cooperate with the small to counter the big. In South Asia, India is big in terms of population, resources, economy, military, and a host of other parameters which we generally call comprehensive national strength. So from that point of view, there is the marginalizing India through what has been mentioned previously by Mr. Mayank Singh, that the all-weather friendship has been created. They have so many sobriquets for this now. They are now calling this as Iron Brothers, both by the Chinese and the Pakistanis. So this marginalizing India has been one of the measures for how a second tiger can be reduced in terms of its influence. So from that point of view, we see this happening. On the other hand, you also need to strengthen the tiger that can dominate this mountain. If we assume Asia as a mountain and China made several efforts. For example, it made its own concrete measures. By 2010, it became the second largest economy. It is now $17 trillion, while the United States is $24 trillion GDP, gross domestic product. And most Chinese think the Americans are declining. Most Chinese also think that they are going to rule over the rest of the world. So it is not just Asia to be in where the dominant countries will be marginalized, but also as in the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017, Xi Jinping suggested China wants to occupy the center stage. Center stage, today the center stage is this dais. In global politics, the center stage is what we in political science call hegemony. And so China wants to be the hegemon. Without saying so explicitly, it wants to occupy the center stage in global affairs. So it is not just India getting marginalized, but also now increasingly the United States. General Shukla mentioned about how the American assessments on AI, artificial intelligence, the Chinese are marginalizing the United States. Today, China produces nearly 30% of global output. Of course, this is pre-COVID era, COVID times, but in many aspects, the 14th five-year plan, which is now being implemented in China since March last year, it has 11 items where China wants to be the superpower. It includes the high-tech manufacturing. It includes trade. They want to become they're already the largest trading country with $6 trillion of exports and imports. United States used to be the largest trading country. Germany used to be the largest high-tech exporting country, which they have marginalized some 4 years ago. Likewise, they wish to be the largest trading country, a trading superpower, as they say, and also in several other areas like shipbuilding, culture, sports, all those 11 areas where they want to be the superpower. So, number one, they make their own efforts in terms of economy, technology, and other aspects in the military as well. So that is one that they are planning, implementing. The second is in diplomatic posturing, in strategic and in realpolitik. They are preparing themselves in marginalizing so that a second tiger cannot emerge in this mountain that we call Asia or globe. So the preparations are, they have 2049 figures, which they call socialist modernization. One doesn't know what exactly that means. But what is important is they have a roadmap for 2021, which they said they have already completed, a roadmap for 2035, a roadmap for 2049. In the military sense, they want to raise a world-class military. A world-class military would mean, from the point of view of pure military, to impose your will on the adversary within 6 hours. That is, you have to transit from one area to the other area and able to defeat the adversary or paralyze the adversary within 6 hours. Those of you who saw this movie, 0 Dark 30, the job was accomplished within 1.5 hours by taking the dead body of Osama bin Laden back to Texas, Tampa. So what is important here is the world-class military is what their ambition is. We have said since 2014, Vikas is our goal. And of course, the attendant issues for this are CNP, Comprehensive National Power, and the other aspects associated with economy, military, and various other in terms of we see that one marginalization, and so we are also making several efforts. Let me just telegraphically say ABCD on this. Counter-terrorism or zero tolerance has been mentioned as part of the India's foreign security policies in the foreseeable future. Second, neighborhood first has been mentioned. So neighborhood first means roughly Southern Asia, which obviously also includes Tibet as part of our overall. And that is where we saw the Uri surgical strikes, we saw the Balakot, we saw Kailash ranges on August 29, 2020, and possibly in future the red lines coming up in these areas. So what we have then seen is there are certain red lines that India had already put forward, and of course defending, securing those red lines as a part of what we are generally now discussing as securing India at 75. One of the other red lines where we are now at a stalemate is securing territorial integrity and sovereignty. So when China mobilized to these 2 brigades in March 2020, despite what has happened between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping in Wuhan in 2018 and in Chennai in October 2019, we saw that today we have a certain armed stalemate between the 2 countries. So this is where we need to bring out of the situation and of course see in a proactive manner how do we resolve this. So far it has been an armed stalemate and the deployment patterns that we have been engaging with the Chinese last 2.5 years. We deployed forces and so there is a certain stalemate here. We do not know, we are now planning how do we get out of this. So that is one major challenge for this securing India at 75. This is a bigger, which also has this political element of not getting marginalized in this second tiger syndrome. We have our own aspirations as part of that Vikas, as candidate Modi mentioned during his campaign in 2014. And so we have now projections, $5 trillion economy by 2025, $32 trillion economy by 2050. So those are the projections that we have, which obviously will have an impact on various aspects, including on HRD, including on the armed forces or others. So Galwan did provide a kind of wake-up call for us in also looking at various sectors as part of this comprehensive national power building. And so that is where we have to. So let me come back to where we started. Kashi as the center of ideas. Gen Shukla mentioned, how do we have this ideational contest with the things that are coming up in the rest of the world. China is actually not the leading force here in terms of ideas. They may have copied several of the things, including several of the electronic warfare, IW, or AI-related components, but they are not the original creators of many one of these. So it is not a very hard situation for India in contesting, as Buddha contested in Kashi some 2,000 years ago, 2,600 years ago. This is where we need to come back, both in terms of economic interdependence, not necessarily by marginalizing others, including China, but by becoming the mainstream idea of how Buddha did these many centuries ago. So we need to explore here, because we are dependent on globalization for FDI. We are dependent on globalization for technology flows. We are dependent on globalization for our own exports, which have increased substantially last 2 years to over $600 billion. And we have a roadmap for also looking at the export-oriented economy. So that is one, not necessarily disrupting. Of course, disrupting in terms of technologies has been a main idea recently in various new technologies that are coming up. So from the point of view of that, I would suggest to looking at the Kashi Manthan from a comprehensive security point of view, where we include not just the traditional security aspects, but also the non-traditional security aspects equally in providing on energy, on environment, on migration, on HIV/AIDS, on health security. Since we are in the pandemic period, that is also one of the areas where we need to look at in a comprehensive manner. Of course, the conventional nuclear deterrence capabilities need to be strengthened. That is indeed a major aspect that we need to focus, but also in non-kinetic means, that is cyber, space, a host of other subjects that have emerged. The other idea that I would suggest is Kashi is also the place for Shivji. And yesterday, the Malawiya Center for Peace Studies took us through the new Dham, Kashi Vishwanath Dham. And this is also an area where we need to look at more carefully. And for example, after the Kailash ranges has been vacated in February 2021, as a part of the quid pro quo on Panpunso Lake, from Sitijab to Finger Point 4 that the Chinese have occupied at that point of time, and this was made as a bait for them to vacate those places. One of the things we also should have kept in mind is the Manasarovar, which is where the Shivling, the original or the classical religious ideas are traced. Even today we have this Manasarovar. Let me provoke by saying that Shivaji cannot be a Chinese citizen in the sense that once Manasarovar is taken over by the Chinese, when the PLA marches into Tibet in 1951, and we change our positions on Tibet in 1954, 1988, and in 2003, we seem to have lost the entire narrative on Manas Sarovar issue. And this is where I think Kashi Manthan also need to proactively look at that aspect. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Now for the final round of observations from
थैंक यू, नमस्कार और जय हिंद। शुक्रिया बहुत बहुत काशी मंथन, 3 साल के बाद वापस आ रहे हैं आपके पास, बड़े दिल के साथ वापस आ रहे हैं, क्योंकि काशी मंथन की शुरुआत हम सबने एक साथ मिलकर की थी यहाँ पर। मैं मुबारकबाद देता हूँ दोबारा मयंक सिंह साहब को, अब वो डॉक्टर बन गए हैं तो उनमें और भी ज़्यादा मुबारकबाद देता हूँ कि इस 3 साल के अरसे में वो डॉक्टर भी बन गए। मैं सिर्फ 3 या 4 मिनट बात करूंगा और आपके लेवल पे आके जो बच्चे बैठे हैं, महामारी जब चल रही थी, पैंडेमिक इट वाज गोइंग ऑन, आप सब बड़े बोर हो रहे थे, घर में बैठे थे, मगर चीन ने आपके लिए कुछ एक्साइटमेंट खड़ा कर दिया। अप्रैल के महीने में 2 महीने के अंदर आकर लद्दाख में किसी किस्म की घुसपैठी कर दी, गलवान का इंसिडेंट हो गया जून के महीने। ये क्यों हुआ? मैं एक लीड लेता हूं डॉक्टर कोंडापल्ली से और ये समझाता हूं कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री हमारे, उनसे 18 दफे मिले थे उनके प्रेसिडेंट्स, उसी कुछ अरसा पहले वुहान में मिले थे, उसके बाद चेन्नई में मिले थे, अच्छे हमारे संबंध बन रहे थे और आर्थिक संबंध बन रहे थे, ट्रेड अच्छा चल रहा था, $90 बिलियन का ट्रेड चल रहा था। तो किसमें एकदम से ये चीन के दिमाग में क्या आ गया कि आकर लद्दाख के ऊपर इस तरह की कार्रवाई की? एक ही वजह है, जो कहा मयंक साहब ने भी कहा शुरू में कि एक पहाड़ पे 2 शेर नहीं बैठ सकते, और उनको सबसे ज्यादा घबराहट जो है वो हो रही थी 2014 से, जो उन्होंने स्ट्रेटेजिक कार्रवाइयां देखी थी भारत की। अगर मैं आपके लिए रिकाउंट करूं तो 2016 में उड़ी हमले के बाद सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक की थी हमने, उसके बाद हमने एक ऑपरेशन जबरदस्त अभियान चलाया था जम्मू कश्मीर में, जिसमें बहुत टेररिस्ट मारे थे। उसके बाद हमने चीन का मुकाबला किया था डोकलैम में 72 दिन तक सिक्किम के बॉर्डर, और उसके बाद पुलवामा का ये हादसा हुई और हमने बालाकोट पे जाकर और स्ट्राइक किया। अगर आप बाहर बैठे होते भारत के तो आप एक ही चीज देखते, ये भारत उभर रहा है, भारत उभर रहा है, बहुत आत्मविश्वास आ रहा है, जो आत्मविश्वास पहले था ही नहीं, सिक्योरिटी के तौर से तो बिल्कुल था ही नहीं। अगर कुछ ना किया भारत के साथ इस समय तो भारत जो है हद से ज्यादा बढ़ता है। इसकी वजह से, और इसकी क्या एविडेंस क्या है? 50,000 ट्रूप्स लेकर चीन समझता है कि लद्दाख के ऊपर चढ़कर लद्दाख का कब्जा करेगा, नामुमकिन। हमने भी दिखा दिया कि 50,000 ट्रूप्स हमने 2 महीने के अंदर एक मिरर डिप्लॉयमेंट में उनके सामने खड़े कर दिए। बेशक राज शुक्ला साहब ने कहा था कि टेक्नोलॉजी में वो बहुत एसिमेट्री है, बहुत माहिर है, ठीक है, मगर हम कुछ कम नहीं है और हम उभर रहे हैं। और आपके लिए सबसे बड़ी चीज ये याद रखनी चाहिए कि जैसे भारत उभर रहा है, जो आपकी नस्ल जब ऊपर बढ़ेगी, ये जो आत्मविश्वास भारत के अंदर आ रहा है, ये दुनिया की दुश्मनी लाएगा आपके खिलाफ, और इसका ख्याल रखना पड़ेगा। तो मैं आ गया आखिरी पॉइंट पर अपने। उधर यूक्रेन की लड़ाई चल रही है, उधर गल्फ के बारे में अभी एम्बेसडर साहब ने भी आपको समझाया। इस स्थिति में भारत जो है चीन के बॉर्डर पे तो अकेला है, अकेला ही है, मगर बाकी जिस तरह से उभर रहा है, भारत को पार्टनरशिप्स बना कर आगे बढ़ाना पड़ेगा। अब आप देखिए, यूक्रेन की लड़ाई से हमारे सामने एक मसला पेश आ गया, और वो था कि हम किसकी तरफ जाएं, रूस की तरफ कि अमेरिका की तरफ। और आखिर में देखा बिल्कुल सही किया, हम किसी की तरफ नहीं गए, अपने तरफ ही रहे, क्योंकि रूस को भी हमको रूस की जरूरत है। रूस से हथियार आते हैं हमारे, 65% भारत की फौजें, एयरफोर्स, सब कुछ जो है हथियार, स्पेयर पार्ट्स, ये सब रूस से ही आता है। और अमेरिका के बिना, जैसे शुक्ला साहब ने कहा, हम टेक्नोलॉजीज जो है उनको हासिल नहीं कर सकते, दोनों की जरूरत है। तो आपके दिमाग में मैं बस ये छोड़ना चाह रहा हूं, भारत को सबके साथ दोस्ती बनाकर रखनी पड़ेगी, मल्टीलैटरलिज्म की एक स्ट्रेटजी जो है उसको फॉलो करनी पड़ेगी, और अपने आप को सिक्योर रखने के लिए, हालांकि चीन और पाकिस्तान की तरफ से क्लूसिव जो है थ्रेट्स आती रहेंगी हमारे तरफ, हमें अपनी पार्टनरशिप्स के साथ अपनी दोस्ती निभाते हुए ये देखना पड़ेगा कि कैसे हम आगे अपने आप को सिक्योर करें। इसमें बहुत सवाल आएंगे, वक्त बहुत कम है, अब मैं इसीलिए यही बंद करता हूं जो मैं बता रहा हूं, और डॉक्टर मयंक सिंह हमसे अब सवालात करेंगे। उम्मीद है कि हम तकरीबन 1 राउंड या 2 राउंड सवालात कर सकते हैं अगले तकरीबन 20 मिनट। शुक्रिया।
थैंक यू सर। सर, जो एक कॉमन स्टैंड उभर के आया है आउट ऑफ दिस डिस्कशन इज वही 2 टाइगर्स इन द माउंटेन। द बिगेस्ट थ्रेट जो एक एक्सटर्नल थ्रेट नजर आ रही है सर, वो चाइना की है। सो दिस इज सर, बिकॉज ऑफ द टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट, एक कॉमन क्वेश्चन मैं सबके सामने सर पहले रखता हूँ, फिर एक कोशिश करूंगा कि सबके लिए एक इंडिविजुअल क्वेश्चन अलग से हो जाए सर। सर, इस ईयर के एंड तक शी जिनपिंग विल बी इलेक्टेड द चेयरमैन ऑफ द चाइनीज कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी। बहुत खबरें आती हैं कि उनके खिलाफ विद्रोह हो रहा है, रिवोल्ट हो रहा है, बट जनरली आई डोंट थिंक वो कोई भी खबर डिपेंडेबल होती है। सो इज गोइंग टू गेट अ थर्ड टर्म। वो सारे नियम कानून तोड़ते हुए खुद ही नियम बनाते हैं, खुद ही तोड़ते हैं। एग्रेशन हम लद्दाख के किनारे देख रहे हैं सर, दे आर बिल्डिंग अ हाईवे। LAC के करीब जो एग्रीमेंट था कि 10 किलोमीटर के अंदर में कोई फाइटर जेट्स नहीं आ सकते, वो कॉन्स्टेंटली ब्रीच हो रहा है। इट्स ऑन अ रेगुलर बेसिस सर। और ऐसे में मेरे जैसे स्टूडेंट का ये एक फीलिंग होती है सर कि एक छोटा भी इंसिडेंट बहुत बड़ा अचानक हो सकता है, स्मॉल मिस्टेक बाय समबडी। सर, अब मेरा ये प्रश्न है सर कि इज चाइना एक्चुअली इंटरेस्टेड इन गेटिंग इन्वॉल्व मिलिटरली विद इंडिया? सर, ये पहला प्रश्न है सर। और दूसरा, क्योंकि दे माइट बी मिलिटरली इंटरेस्टेड कि दे टेक ऑन इंडिया, तो हाउ वेल इज इंडिया प्रिपेयर्ड टू टेक ऑन चाइना मिलिटरली, इकोनॉमिकली एंड टेक्नोलॉजिकली? सर, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम जनरल राज शुक्ला।
तो क्वेश्चन आपने सुन लिया, जनरल हसनैन ने कहा कि इसको छोटा रखें, तो आई जस्ट कीप इट टू 3 पॉइंट। I don't think China is looking for an all-out conflict. That's not the question. What China is doing very smart, and it starts from this. They cannot be 2 tigers on one. So they have put it differently. They say for the first time you have 2 economies, number 1 and number 3 in PPP going in close proximity. Their geostrategic trajectories are bound to clash. Trajectories will clash because you don't have a buffer, and the Himalayas now have been breached by technology. Now, whether that clash is peaceful is up to us. If there is any let-up in our capabilities, that clash can be violent. So I'm not saying that it will happen, provided we don't let our guard down. But what they are doing, and I would like to hear Professor Kondapalli, Gen Raj Shukla, they are carrying out as much capacity building in the WTC as they are carrying up in Taiwan. Now, what is our interpretation of this capacity? Some of us use quote pre-Galwan. Pre-Galwan, somehow the dominant narrative was that despite the capacity building here, the primary orientation is Taiwan. Now, it does seem from all perspectives that the primary orientation is Taiwan. But if there is any let up this side, he will make use of it. And what he will, in my view, do, through competition, crisis and conflict, he will just try and increase the capacity gap and then ask us the question that do we wish to fight? So the only answer is to create capacity at the similar pace. Now here, while the intent is good, what we must conclude, and this is where the Chinese challenge is unique, that they are in scale and pace, they are outstripping everybody. So we have all the talent with us, we have the resources with us, we have the leadership with us. It is an execution that we need to step up the game. If we do that, we will live peacefully. If we don't, and just one more point I would like to point out, look at his larger, strategic game. The larger strategic game is even more worrisome. It is to confine us or make us stick to the land borders. So, आप LAC में जो कर रहा है, turn our gaze to the LAC and the many issues that Ambassador Trigunayat raised. There is an equal pincer developing from the West. So if our focus is confined to the land borders, he will create fresh trouble for us in the sea. And it's already happening. So the plan is a maritime neighbor in the Iowa, they have a developing eastern maritime flank, strong western maritime. So the whole strategic challenge is how we continue to build capacity on the LAC, yet find resources for this threat that is developing from the sea. Is it possible? That broad point I made about asymmetric deterrence, it is possible. With that, if we restructure, we do all that, and with some addition. So this is, in my view, how the Chinese threat will manage.
Thank you for that question. I agree with General Shukla about the capability build-up, but I would like to add material capability build-up, which basically would mean also the HRD development, human resource development in the border areas, not just the roads, railways and other things that we build up, but also the co-opting, bringing up the indigenous people and their levels in economy, education, technical skills, and others. I think that is very crucial for us so that these indigenous people become the bulwarks in that region, because the threat that we are facing from China is more comprehensive. For example, since this year they implemented the land border law, and they have already constructed 624 well-off society villages. Now these well-off society villages typically have about 100 households, and most important, these are generally populated by the ex-servicemen and possibly even intelligence related. So we actually have a big outpost coming up, very, very articulated outpost coming up, integrated into the society inside. For example, last week the Pancham Lama visited the few counties, and he encouraged 25 Tibetan families were encouraged to intermarry with Han Chinese. So a new demographic change has come about in these border areas, which I think we need to keep in mind. We possibly may not bank on what we used to depend previously on the Tibetan community in India for information or for other purposes. Today we see that because of this intermarriage, we see a completely a different demographic change with Han and Tibetan offsprings coming up in the line of actual control areas. So we need to counter this by a material build-up in the line of control. Not just the military, but also it is rooted in the society, in the Ladakhi society, in the Himachali society, Uttaranchal, Sikkim, Arunachal. What Kiran Rijiju once mentioned when he was the MOS home about creating the livelihood conditions for them, creating educational institutions for them in the border areas itself. So this becomes the Indian project. This becomes the bulwark on the borders. So that is what is going to hold back any invasion, any intrusion by the Chinese on a structural term. So I would like to add that there should be a material capability built up which includes the society in that areas as the basis for our policies. That is basically we need to co-opt the entire communities living in that area. Mr. Regiju did initiate that process, but we have not completed that process. It's an $800 million project that we initiated, but we are nowhere near when we look at those objectives. In the 3 domains.
Sir, I hope to, I'm sorry to disturb, but we are running short of time, sir. I think we'll pass on to the master team.
I'll take 1 minute only. I fully agree with what Gen Raj Shukla and Dr. Kondapalli said. Gen Ata Hasnain. You see, we have to, there is a theory that 2 tigers can't be there, but at the same time, Xi Jinping, while he was visiting, he said there is enough space for both India and China to grow together. So, one thing you have to, while we have to continue to maintain some kind of a parity with them and give them a bloody nose when they try to come to us militarily, technological superiority is extremely important, all those factors. We need to remember one thing, that China still follows the Sun Tzu philosophy, to win a war without fighting it. And that's precisely what they are trying to do. You see, when they don't issue a visa to an Arunachali, you get hassled in a democracy. But they are claiming the right. They say, you don't need, you are part of India. Like those kind of things, they'll continue to needle us rather than taking on the war. Because the moment you go to war, whether within India goes or China goes, and that may be designed by the West, we have to be extremely cautious. You go back by 20, 30 years. So if you are having a dream of becoming the topmost economies of the world, you will be receding 20, 30 years, and the West will continue to rule that way. That's precisely one of the games we need to look at.
I'll be as brief as possible. देखिए एक चीज याद रखिए, भारत में ना हमें लड़ाई के बारे में सोचना और लड़ाई के बारे में बातें करने में बड़ा मजा आता है। इट्स अ वेरी रोमांटिक आइडिया। लड़ाई चल रही है बॉर्डर पे, आप नहीं लड़ रहे हैं मगर भाई तो लड़ रहे हैं, आपकी फौजियां लड़ रही है वहां। बड़ा रोमांटिक आइडिया होता है। याद रखिए, सिक्योरिटी इज नॉट अबाउट फाइटिंग अलोन। ये आज के इस पूरे वार्तालाप में ये देखिए कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव सिक्योरिटी की बात है, और प्रोफेसर साहब ने बिल्कुल सही समझा दी। अब मैं समझता हूं कि लड़ाई नहीं छिड़ेगी, मगर अलग अलग किस्म की लड़ाइयां होती हैं। एक चीज होती है डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन। मैं समझता हूं एक दिन डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन करेंगे कहीं ना कहीं। चीन क्यों करना चाहता है ये डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन? ये मैंने पहले बड़े तफसील से काशी मंथन में एक दफे समझाया भी, एक बड़े से मैप के ऊपर समझाया था कि चीन को डर लगता है सिर्फ एक चीज से, समुंदर से। पहाड़ों में तो वो शेर है, समुंदर में वो चूहा है। क्योंकि उसने सबसे बड़ी गलती की थी 1978 में, जब 4 मॉडर्नाइजेशन शुरू किए। तो चौथा मॉडर्नाइजेशन था मॉडर्नाइजेशन ऑफ पीएलए, और पीएलए के अंदर सबसे लो प्रायोरिटी थी किसको? नेवी की। हालांकि चीन को सोचना चाहिए था कि उसकी जो सिक्योरिटी है वो सिर्फ नेवी पर निर्भर है, क्योंकि कहां से? पूरे गल्फ से तो उसकी एनर्जी आती है, तेल गैस सब वहीं से आता है। और कहां से, कौन से जरिए आता है? इंडियन ओशन के जरिए, मलाक्का स्ट्रेट्स के जरिए। और जितना कंटेनर ट्रैफिक है, जिससे कि उन्होंने एक दफे 14% ग्रोथ अचीव की है, वो कंटेनर ट्रैफिक इसी रास्ते जाता है, मलाक्का स्ट्रेट से होकर, इंडियन ओशन से होकर यूरोप, अफ्रीका, साउथ एशिया, सेंट्रल एशिया, सेंट्रल एशिया तो नहीं, सॉरी, दीज आर द एरियाज दैट ऑल गोज। तो अगर कहीं बाधा डालनी है चीन के ग्रोथ में, चीन के आत्मविश्वास में, तो सिर्फ उसके साथ लड़ाई करनी चाहिए समुद्र की। ये अमेरिका जानता है, अमेरिका जानता है, और उसको मालूम है कि अगले 15-20 साल में चीन जो है अपनी नेवी को बढ़ा रहा है, उसको बढ़ावा दे रहा है। वो वो भी मजबूत नेवी बन जाएगी। आज मिसाल के तौर पे तीन एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर है चीन के पास, अमेरिका के पास 15 है, 11 उनमें से न्यूक्लियर है। अमेरिका के पास 135 सबमरीन हैं, चीन के पास 60-65 सबमरीन अभी नेवल फॉर्म में नहीं आए हैं। तो इसलिए ये हर साल कुछ ना कुछ हिमालयस में, नॉर्दर्न हिमालयन बेल्ट में कुछ ना कुछ करते रहेंगे, छुट-पुट करेंगे, एक डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन करेंगे, मिसाइल फायरिंग करेंगे, ये करेंगे, जैसे अभी ताइवान में कर रहे हैं, उस तरह के डेमोन्स्ट्रेशंस करेंगे, आपको आंखें दिखाने के लिए, आपको थ्रेटन करने के लिए और आपको ये नीचा दिखाने के लिए कि आपके अंदर काबिलियत नहीं है चीन के साथ मुकाबला।
मेरा अगला सवाल जनरल राज शुक्ला सर। सर, जब ये रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर स्टार्टेड, व्हेन दिस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्टार्टेड सर, all we got to read in the newspapers and magazines and websites was how bad Russia was and how fair the Ukrainian side was, sir. I'm not getting to that, sir. Now the China-Taiwan crisis starts, sir. Now the other narrative, sir, that China is all bad and Taiwan is all good. I'm not getting into the strategic part and what. Sir, I'm talking of the things we get to read, sir. जो एक वेस्टर्न नरेटिव हमारे सामने आता है, हम सिर्फ वेस्टर्न नरेटिव ही पढ़ते हैं सर, वी डोंट गेट टू रीड दी अदर साइड। तो ग्लोबल टाइम्स तो खैर सर कोई नहीं पढ़ सकता है, वो एक अलग चीज़ है सर। मेरा जो थ्रेट परसेप्शन जो आता है सर, वो इंडिया पे आता है कि किसी दिन सर हमारे वेस्ट से वो रिलेशन वो नहीं रहे जो आज है। मान लीजिए सर एक हाइपोथेटिकल सिचुएशन में हम फिर वही नरेटिव पढ़ेंगे, पूरी दुनिया वही नरेटिव पढ़ेगी कि इंडिया इज स्टिल लैंड ऑफ द स्नेक चार्मर्स। इस नैरेटिव को काउंटर करने के लिए सर हमारी क्या तैयारी होनी चाहिए कि सर सिर्फ वेस्टर्न नैरेटिव हमारी ऑडियंस को नहीं सर।
दिस नैरेटिव बिल्डिंग जो है मतलब एक बड़ा मुश्किल सवाल है, बट बहुत ज़रूरी है। एंड आई थिंक जनरल हसनैन हैज बीन टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस फॉर इयर्स, स्ट्रेटेजिक कमिटमेंट, इसकी जो बात है, अब इसको लागू किस तरह से करें या इसको हाउ डू यू इम्प्लीमेंट इट, एंड हियर देयर हैज टू बी अ फंडामेंटल चेंज। एक और मैं चाइना की मिसाल या रशिया चाइना की मिसाल देता हूँ। सी दे थिंक लॉन्ग, दे ड्रीम बिग एंड दे एग्जीक्यूट विद क्लिनिकल प्रिसिशन। इंडिया में क्या है, दे आर स्कूल्स ऑफ थॉट। मोमेंट यू स्टार्ट स्पीकिंग ऑफ बिग थिंग्स, लोग बोलेंगे यार इंग्लिश मारता है, बट दैट बिग थिंग and the nitty-gritty in execution are as important. Can they be done? There are so many examples. आपने narrative की बात की. Both Russia and China, see where they have taken narrative building to. So in their doctrines, information warfare is as important and as salient as building a conventional military and a nuclear military. So conventional military, nuclear military and information warfare. And therefore you have these narratives. ये जो मैंने आपको जिक्र किया वो टॉक में भी अबाउट रेवोल्यूशन, वेल्थ एंड ग्रेटनेस। अब जैसे एंड इट इज ऑल सिंक्रोनाइज्ड इन नैरेटिव। आई माइट बी रॉन्ग विद प्रोफेसर Kondapalli, but when you examine how has Chinese economy expanded, I mean below 2% now, it's a conscious decision. In the CCP they have argued that we have reached a certain level in our economic descent, but our narrative is not only about the economy. The narrative is as also about preserving the ideological position of the party. So if Jack Ma is a threat, it's put in place. It is also about unifying territories. So that it cannot be kicked down the road. India में क्या है, एक तो narrative building is, and the point is, I think the Prime Minister put it very well. Somehow we tend to differentiate in our narrative, but these two are not contrarian. Professor Kondapalli ने भी जिक्र किया कि ये जो शांति की चाह है और शक्ति की राह, they are not different, एक ही है। But we somehow feel कि if we step up the military, we are neglecting development. That's not true. Both have to grow together. So in narrative building, it is certainly required. I think it is my interpretation. See, like Professor Kondapalli was saying, that China has said 2050 world-class power, 2035 leading technology. They not only stick to these timelines and narratives, they advance them. At one time, The Chinese military was told that 2035 tak you become the regional power. Now it's 27, 28, and they are so building capacities that the Americans are conceding. So execution of the narrative is extremely important. So when the Chinese laid down like this, in India this will not work. So I think this narrative which the Prime Minister has built now about what is this Amrit Kal and Vishwa Guru is a good narrative. That this is the auspicious period. In these 25 years, if you have to become a Vishwa Guru, what are the touch points you need in every domain? Economy, equity, military, science, all that, and how you can convert. That could be. And just one last point I want to make about that preparedness, just 5 seconds. See, we are very good, or we are pretty okay when it comes to defense. So our strategic system and defense to ensure India's protection of sovereignty, territorial integrity may not be violent. But what we need to make a switch now, if we are to become this Vishwaguru and great power, is to transform this military into an instrument that can enable India's rise. To defense ke liye we are okay, but to enable India's rise, you need transformation. So everywhere you need constant change and transformation. If we do that, Chinese are certainly not 90, they are 40.
Sir, Professor Kondapalli. So you talked of Panchen Lama and how hands they're doing that inter-managed thing with the hands in Tibetan. Sir. My question is about His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We have been consciously kind of avoiding him for the past so many years. It's only been recently when he's been recognized by the government in different forms. Sir. They talk about his reincarnation. He has himself said, because China has said that they will not accept any Dalai Lama except what is basically according to the rules of the Chinese Communist Party. My thing is that Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama, he has himself said he will not be decided, he will himself decide who the next Dalai Lama is, not the Chinese Communist Party. How active should India be in supporting this idea of the Dalai Lama and promoting it throughout the world, sir, of the Dalai Lama actually being the real appointer of the next Dalai Lama?
Thank you for that question. I just also want to come back on the narrative war quickly. The Russia-Ukraine war is very, very important for everyone looking at how narratives have been emerging. The first few days, February 24th, when the war began, the Russian general said by March 5th they will wind up the war. We are still in 5 months after the war. So that is what the most important thing. The Ukrainians were able to stop the Russians in their tracks. The most important thing here is the democracy versus authoritarianism, soft authoritarianism. That narrative has come about in this Ukrainian war. I think that is very important. We also are looking at this in terms of the social media, mass media, social networking sites and others. The way we converted the Kashmir issue into a terrorism-related issue while we promoted democracy intensely, the village level elections in Kashmir, the block level elections or others, and inviting the international observers to look at these elections that are being conducted in Kashmir. So we changed the narrative from lack of public support to that of democracy, but most important, Pakistan as the center for terrorism. So that happened in the last 2 decades. So this narrative war, I think, is very important in addition to what we do, the hard power. But the third part of that is we also are using hard power for the disaster relief. For example, during the tsunami, where we mobilized 26,000 sailors to save lives in Thailand, Indonesia, Myanmar, Maldives, and Sri Lanka and other places. So I think this is also another narrative that we have. And when Dr. Jaishankar mentions that India wants to be the leader, he's choosing areas which are not very conflict providing. For example, solar energy. International Solar Alliance, or the other aspects on which nobody will say, I don't want to be, we will not allow you to be the leader. So those are areas I think that is very important for us. On the Dalai Lama issue, the Dalai Lama is now 87 years. And the talk about the 15th Dalai Lama has been actually promoted by the Chinese. Not by the Indians, not by the Tibetans, not by others, but deliberately the Chinese began this during the Beijing Olympics in 2008 because they have to carry the torch march to the Mount Everest, which they have to pass through Tibet in those areas. So since then, the narrative also included that the Tibetans are, Tibetan Youth Congress, for example, is like the Al-Qaeda, that they are carrying AK-47s, they are introducing violence as a means to resolve their problems. Although TYC constitution says non-violence as their means of protest and others, including the Charter of Rights, where the Tibetans have mentioned about non-violence as their goal. And the Dalai Lama had mentioned in Strasbourg proposals in 1988 and also in the self-autonomy principle.
Sir, I'm not very good at interrupting, sir. What I would like to hear from you is, should we allow the Chinese to run away with it? A very brief answer.
The Chinese have suggested that they will choose the golden urn in order to select the next Dalai Lama, the 15th Dalai Lama. But in tradition, the current Dalai Lama passes on the soul to the next person, and that takes sometimes 15 years, 20 years for that replacement of the soul entering into the boy. And by the way, he also said he can choose a girl as the next Dalai Lama. So there is that gender issue that is coming up. So what I was trying to say is that there is only one historical phase where they have chosen the golden urn process. The Chinese Amban, who was stationed in Lhasa during the post-Han dynasty period, they have had this kind of selection. What they did was also to deliberately kill the existing Dalai Lama by poisoning, by other means. Surprisingly, in 1 century, there were about 4 to 5 Dalai Lamas. In a span of maybe 80, 90 years, the person who was anointed as the next Dalai Lama passed away in his youth. It happened before in history, which suggests that if the Chinese appoint their own Dalai Lama, number one, it creates a kind of division among the Tibetans in terms of a Dalai Lama anointed next Dalai Lama and Chinese anointed Dalai Lama. So you have 2 Dalai Lamas, as we have now 2 Pancham Lamas, the Chinese appointed Pancham Lama and the Dalai Lama anointed Pancham Lama. So that creates a lot of confusion, which also has a spillover effect, for instance, in the trans-Himalayan security in terms of law and order for us to look at carefully on these issues. How do we stop this? Of course, this is Indian government has not made any comments on this because this is a purely religious issue that the Dalai Lama has to solve. And it appears in the congregations that have happened in Dharamshala, he had invited the Mongolian monks who were instrumental in the institution of the Dalai Lama way back in the 13th, 14th centuries. So there is the Dalai Lama's active effort currently to look at this matter. So some years ago, he transferred the temporal power. The Dalai Lama is the god and he is also the king. So he transferred the kingly position or the temporal powers to the Sikyong, the Prime Minister who is now being elected. First, Lobsang Sangye, next Pempa Sering, who is currently the Prime Minister in exile. He transferred these powers to the Sikyong, the Prime Minister in exile, so that he looks after only the spiritual functions. So now the Dalai Lama is only exercising the godly functions. And possibly the 15th Dalai Lama will also have to be restricted, which means that the temporal social welfare benefits issue will have to be taken care of by the Prime Minister, who will be elected by popular mandate. So that is the arrangement that has been made. On the question on what would happen if the Chinese appoint, it would be a division among the Tibetan community. But an ordinary Tibetans know who is their Dalai Lama, who is their God. Right? So there is no confusion among the Tibetans, ordinary Tibetans, which means...
In my opinion, sir, India, I mean, as a student of the issue, sir, I would say that India has basically not made best use of the soft underbellies of China, sir. Xinjiang, Tibet, maybe Taiwan, sir. I mean, that's my opinion, sir. We should have made better use of the whole issue, sir, as they do of Kashmir and other issues. But I'll take the next question to Ambassador Trigunayat. Sir, we'll have two questions and very small questions, sir. Please, sir. क्योंकि जानना चाहते हैं लोग, सर. एक तो सर जो इंडियन अप्रोच रहा है रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर में, हम लोगों ने जनरल परसेप्शन हुआ कि सर यूएस से हमारा नैरेटिव जो है बिगड़ जाएगा, रिलेशनशिप जो डेवलपिंग थी वो बिगड़ जाएगा, बट समहाउ वो हुआ नहीं है, थैंकफुली. तो सर इसके पीछे जो छोटे से हम जानना चाहेंगे सर कि फॉरेन पॉलिसी जो आइडियाज थी और उसका जो एग्जीक्यूशन था उस पर अगर आप रोशनी डालें.
देखिए, जहाँ तक मैं समझता हूँ कि जो भारत की पॉलिसी है, और जैसा सरकार ने कहा, मंत्री ने कहा कि ये हमारे नेशनल इंटरेस्ट. दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि हमारा हमेशा से पोजिशन है कि आफ्टर ऑल यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल में भी हम थे इस वक्त जब ये हुआ है. तो क्या चाहते हैं आप? दुनिया चाहती है शांति, पीस होना चाहिए, डायलॉग होना चाहिए, डिप्लोमेसी होनी चाहिए, सॉवरेनिटी एंड टेरिटोरियल इंटेग्रिटी जो यूएन चार्टर के पार्ट है. तो भारत ने वही बात कही जो सबको चाहिए. दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि इसके चलते आप एक अपना इंडिपेंडेंट एक नज़रिया आपने किया जो जिसके लिए आप जाने जाते हैं. अब जंपिंग इनटू द अमेरिकन शिप और द रशियन शिप वुड हैव नॉट सर्व्ड आवर पर्पस ईदर वे. लेकिन उसके बाद मेरा मानना ये है कि हमें शायद उस जिस वक्त में बहुत ज़्यादा ये हाई पे था, कुछ एक मेरा मानना है, गलत भी हो सकता हूँ, कि हमें एक तरह से इंटरलोक्यूटर बनने की कोशिश करनी चाहिए थी. और मैं समझता हूँ शायद उसमें हमने एक आध स्टेप ले लिया. बट एज फार एज पॉलिसी इज कंसर्न, मैं समझता हूँ कि बहुत करेक्ट पॉलिसी है. और दूसरी चीज़ ये कि जैसे मैंने लास्ट अभी कहा कि आज आपको एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है, क्योंकि ज़्यादातर कंट्रीज़ जो आज बहुत पावरफुल लोग हैं, मिडिल ईस्ट में हो या अफ्रीका में कहीं भी, वो देख रहे हैं कि थर्ड पोल कैसा होगा अगर कोल्ड वॉर 2.0 होता है. और उसके लिए आज भारत को फिर से उस पोजीशन पे पहुंचने की आवश्यकता है और कर भी सकते हैं.
जनरल हसनैन सर, लास्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू सर. कोई भी चर्चा हो सिक्योरिटी की विदाउट पाकिस्तान तो सर ऑडियंस को लगता है कुछ खाली छूट है. टोटल मिस में है पाकिस्तान सर. एंड कहीं ना कहीं सर फिर वो नज़र आ रहा है द सेम ओल्ड स्टोरी ऑफ द न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स फॉलिंग इनटू द हैंड्स ऑफ जिहादीज. वो सर एक कहानी शुरू होती है और पाकिस्तान फिर कहीं से लोन ले लेता है सर, कहीं से यूएस आ जाता है. तो मेरा ये जानना था सर कि हाउ रियल इज दिस थ्रेट ऑफ द न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स फॉलिंग इनटू द हैंड्स ऑफ द जिहादी.
ये सवाल बहुत बढ़िया सवाल है, मगर मेरा इसमें बहुत वेरी ब्रीफली बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग बिलीफ है कि अमेरिकन इंटरेस्ट जो है पाकिस्तान में इतने गहरे हैं, जो स्ट्रेटेजिकली स्पेशली बिकॉज जगह जगह लोकेशन ऐसी है पाकिस्तान की कि अमेरिका के इंटरेस्ट हर समय रहेंगे और अमेरिका पाकिस्तान को गिरने नहीं देगा, विल नॉट अलाउ इट टू इवेपोरेट. और ये जो हथियार है सबसे बड़ा थ्रेट किसको है? अमेरिका को. बिकॉज एवरीवन अंडरस्टैंड्स कि अगर ये जिहादी एलिमेंट्स के पास पहुंच गए तो सबसे बड़ा जो पहला टारगेट होगा वो अमेरिका होगा. तो आई थिंक द सिक्योरिटी ऑफ दिस is being ensured to some extent through some kind of a back channel agreements between the Pakistan Army, the US Armed Forces, the US administration. कुछ ना कुछ इनके बीच में है जिसके बारे में ज़्यादातर दुनिया को नहीं मालूम है, क्योंकि इस तरह से उनके पास no one doesn't really know, but there may be at least 50 to 100 weapons they say and distributed in all different locations. अगर ये हाथ में किसी के आ गए तो of course you require launchers along with it, मगर जिहादी elements can take over elements of the army itself. तो पाकिस्तान आर्मी के अंदर अगर जिहाद की प्रॉब्लम आ गया तो then it will be a major threat. But I do think it's a potent threat. There is no doubt about it. But I do think attention is being paid to it by the Western powers and particularly the United States.